Hi everyone, we're back. This is Anto Chávez with Be Latina. Today we're interviewing another Latina staffer from the Biden-Harris campaign, and this time is Rebecca Acuna, who's the Texas State Director. So let's get started.
Hey, good afternoon. It's so good to be here with you all and everybody watching. I came prepared with my Latina voter shirt.
Nice, I love it. It looks awesome with that background too.
Thank you.
How are you doing? Where are you in the world? I'm guessing Texas, but where in Texas?
I am in wonderful Dallas, Texas, but I am always representing the border as a Mexican immigrant. I grew up on the Texas-Mexico border, and I still proudly have my 956 area code representing our border communities.
I love that. So let's get more into the campaign and your work right now. Who are you and what is exactly your role with the Biden and Harris campaign in Texas?
This is the best part of this question is that I am every single Latina watching right now. My parents and myself are immigrants from another country. I moved to Texas when I was 6 years old. Both of my parents worked in restaurants growing up. My mom as a waitress at Denny's, then at a cashier at Home Depot. That is how she retired. And my dad managing Mexican restaurants. A long time ago, it seems like a long time ago now, before the word Dream Act existed, I got to be one of the first cohorts in the whole country to use the in-state tuition laws to go to college. And what did that say to me? It says that government affects all of us. It's what got me into politics. It's what got me working in a few campaigns and slowly stair-stepping up after working for state legislative races, congressional races, the Wendy Davis campaign, nonprofits focused on getting more Latinos elected. I get to be the state director for a presidential campaign in a year where Latinos can win this for us. So when I talk about my story, I say to other Latinas that me being here is you being here.
Yeah, that's really awesome. I mean, the fact that, you know, your story is many of our stories, and that's important because representation is everything, right? So now with this presidential campaign, I'm sure, you know, you've been doing similar type of works your whole life, but this must be crazy. It's a lot of work. So what does a regular day look like, if any?
You know, it's interesting because you like every day, like every job, you have a plan, you have a calendar, you've got certain goals you've got to meet, certain numbers, certain meetings, and then every single day it all gets thrown out the window because there are fire drills, because there are technology issues, because there are voter suppression issues. So every day, and unlike another job, it's like you don't have time to, you can't waste a minute. You can't waste an hour to redo things. So you've got to say, how can we change this right now? How can we get back on track? So it'll start with a meeting with HQ where we're trying to line up on and report about what everyone is doing. And then we've got department updates, like what are we doing to make sure we hit the numbers we need from an organizing perspective? What are we doing to make sure everybody's ballots are counted from a voter protection perspective? How are we getting our message out through the media? I'll tell you another thing, the cool thing about being the head of the campaign in Texas is that we get to make sure that we hire people to organize in communities that are from those communities, that understand those communities, so that there's no disconnect, there is no lack of cultural competence when we are connecting with voters.
And so, you know, you're talking to voters and just people who are living in the US, immigrants, residents, whoever, from Texas, right, every day to see what the issues are. What do you think, you know, the top concerns right now in the state of Texas are?
Yeah. So the first thing that's on people's mind, but it's not a concern. The first thing is excitement. Is the excitement that we can do it this year. You're looking at public polls. Those public polls are showing that this race is tied. We all remember Beto O'Rourke. All his polls said he was down 7-6. He got within 2 points. So number one, what we're hearing is people are excited. They are going to walk through fire to vote. They are so excited because we finally believe that it can be done in Texas. Now, what are people worried about? Like people across the country, we have been highly affected by COVID-19 and the lack of response to COVID-19. Latinos have been disproportionately impacted through COVID. We have lost family members. People have lost their jobs. People have lost part of their income. So COVID-19 is on everybody's mind. And also tied to that is lack of access to healthcare. We always knew in Texas that Latinos were disproportionately uninsured, but there's nothing like a pandemic to amplify the needs to get healthcare fixed. So we are considered essential workers, which means we were always out there. We were getting put at risk at higher rates. Our community is more likely to live in multi-generational households and not be able to quarantine. And we also lack access to insurance. So right now, what our community needs is a leader to listen to science, to listen to doctors, and get this pandemic under control. COVID-19 and healthcare are Texans' top issues.
And so what would you say, with all this in mind, what would you say to those people who, especially Latinas, who may think their vote doesn't matter? What's at stake and why it's important this year, but every year, for Latinas to vote and go beyond that, volunteer or do whatever they can to make sure that, this election makes a big change?
Your future is at stake. I talked about my story. I graduated high school in 2002 when the state of Texas passed the In-State Dream Act, the in-state version of the Dream Act. It was the state legislature was controlled by Democrats. Had we not had Democrats in office at that point, and it was also signed by a Republican governor. So these are types of laws. It's not about voting one day on election day. It is recognizing that that vote is going to have ripple effects, not just for us right now, but for future generations. I talked about my parents working in restaurants. When I am not running the Biden campaign, I will go back to a corporate job in a top 50, in a Fortune 50 company. My sister is also at another Fortune 50 company. I can tie those things back to a 2001 law that passed. My sister just had her first baby. Her baby's, my nephew's life is not going to be like mine and my sister's growing up. That kid is never going to have to worry about money, or if his parents can't afford their house, or if they have to sell because they can't afford it, or where are they going to live? All these things that my parents thought about. So when we talk about your vote mattering, it's going to impact your family and generations. It's going to mean, do we expand Medicaid? Do we make sure more people have access to healthcare? Do we expand Pell Grants so that kids from every community can afford to go to college and graduate with less debt? It is going to impact you and your children. And there is no community where we have more room to grow than in the Latino community in terms of our sheer force of numbers. But we've got to take our sheer force of numbers and make those translate to the ballot box.
Of course. And personally, what motivated you to join this campaign? Because there are a million things you could be doing, like you said, but you chose to do this kind of hard work right now. So why? Why didn't
Yeah. You know, what's funny is that when I got the call to join the campaign, I was very privileged to be quarantining at an Airbnb beachside in Miami, where my lunch breaks were spent swimming in the ocean. And I got this call, like, do you want to do this? We need you to do this for Texas. And what motivated me to do it and trade that for stress 24 hours a day is a reminder of what I felt in 2016 on election night and what we have gone through for the past 4 years, where we're talking about Muslim bans, where we're talking about kids in cages, where we're talking about taking away DACA, where we're talking about threats to repeal the Affordable Care Act, where we're talking about pretending that there isn't a pandemic going. I wanted to say, I want to look back at this moment and say I did something about it. That's what motivates me to be here. Is Senator Harris, on her speech at the convention, said something that resonated a lot with me. She said, you know, years from now, people are going to read about this dark time in history and they're going to ask us, what was that like? Can you tell me what that was like? And her response is, we will tell them what we did. That is why I'm here today.
Amazing. So I think one of my last questions would be, what are your expectations for the last debate? What do you think is going to look like?
My expectations are that you're going to see the big contrast between a failed presidency and someone who relies on science, relies on facts, who cares about the American people, who knows what we are going through, and someone who is going to, on the one hand, our current failed president, who is going to make this about himself and make this about politics, and a leader in Joe Biden who has the experience, the compassion, the vision, and the plans to move us forward.
Well, I can't wait to see what happens. We can't live this life without telling people how to take action. So how can people get involved? Can you tell us a little bit about the volunteer opportunities that you have in Texas and throughout the country, since a lot of it is, you know, you can do it from the comfort of your house?
Hey, that's what makes this year different. To all the Latinas watching, you can go to Joe Biden's campaign page, joebiden.com, put in your zip code. It will pop up a list of many film banks happening. We have at least 3 shifts a day. That is 12, 6, and 9 Central Time, just in the state of Texas. And those in the weekends, they are 9, 12, 3, and 6 Central Time. If you want to call, that's where we need the most help. But no, if you don't want to call, you can text. You can text voters. And here's why it's important. Yes, we have a big election coming up in 13 days. But to all you Latinas, this is going to be the first experience. This is the first step. This is your first opportunity to organize. Pretty soon you can work in a legislative office. And I promise in 4 to 6 years, some of you who are making your very first calls this time are going to be running for office. That's why it's important.
Amazing. I can't wait to see that change in a few years. It's already happening. We see it happening already. So thank you so much for joining us, Rebecca. It was an awesome conversation and an important one for sure. So everybody who's watching, please send this to your family and friends. This video will exist on our page. And so this is how you get them the answers that they need to make an informed decision and to go out and vote and make a plan. So thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Make a plan to vote. Thank you all.
Bye.
Bye.